Hello YouTubers, you're on the Frederick Lopez channel, and today I'm going to be going over my spoiler-filled thoughts over X-Men Apocalypse. I was out of state for a while, but I did get a chance to see X-Men and kind of processed it over a week and a half. I know this review is a bit late, but I decided to get my thoughts out there. If you want to check my initial reactions, non-spoiler, and thoughts on the cast and crew in the film, pros and cons, you can check it out here. And my Dark Knight of Steel channel, non-spoiler. But as far as spoiler thoughts, let's just go from the beginning. I'm going to be kind of rambling here and there. But where do I start? Oh yeah, John Ottman. Holy crap, as an editor and music composer, I love how they brought his theme back. I really missed it in the other X-Men movies. And I've loved it since I heard it on X2, X-Men United. And then they brought it back for X-Men Days of Future Past. So I'm glad they continued the tradition of having that song. And I also like the rendition at the end where it's like, you're the X-Men. It was interesting seeing ancient Egypt with Apocalypse, and it was very different of him transferring his consciousness to other mutants over time, instead of him being like this other worldly being as a first mutant. So that was interesting, and then like the four horsemen of the Apocalypse depicted from the Bible onto him. So it was very interesting. I like that whole beginning, and then trapping him in there, and then kind of going through the history and time. It was very different, but I like it where Bryan Singer ends it with Cerebro and the X and then opening. Besides John Ottman's wonderful score, I really loved how they did Cyclops in this. Probably the most Cyclops has done in any movie, and I really hope to have more of him because he's a very underutilized character in the films compared to where he's like in the comics. I like how they started him with him gaining his abilities. And my only cons is that it does kind of go everywhere and then eventually connects. But it is a bit slow as far as like you following everything. It's not hard to follow, it's just that it's just everywhere before it gets a main story that's just straightforward. I liked Nightcrawler. He reminded me of Alan Cummings' Nightcrawler. I like how Mystique saved him. Maybe it's because he's her son. They don't quite say in the movie, but I'm thinking that's what it was. And then, let's see. I liked the introduction of how Jean Grey and Scott Summers met. I liked Havoc coming back. He had a lot more to do, and you really get to see him very mature and just like the development him and Charles Xavier have had since First Class and then Days of Future Past. Even though he's his older brother instead of younger, I like what they did with him, and it was very noble that he sacrificed himself, or at least wasn't saved in the X-Men Mansion. But he could still be alive because they didn't show a body, so it could be the Genosha Agenda storyline where they both fight in issue 3, so we'll have to see. I like the use of Jean Grey's powers being really powerful, but you get to see hints of the Phoenix with it burning in the room and different stuff like that. James McAvoy has really gone into the role very well. I like most of all the 80s. They really kept everything from the 80s pop culture, and then we have to get to it. The Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams scene with Quicksilver. They found a way to top Time in a Bottle. Sure, it's a little bit more computerized and slow motion, but I really, really love the sequence, and it just shows you how powerful of a mutant Quicksilver is. And I also like how they address that he's Magneto's son, and him coping with that. Very good. Now, speaking of Michael Fassbender as Magneto, wow, he has the best performance in the film, and you just feel for him. For the first time after the events of Days of Future Past, there's a new timeline. Mystique's regarded as a hero. Magneto goes into hiding, but now he has a family, wife and daughter. And he's just working at a factory, and he has a regular life until he uses his powers to save someone. So they rat him out, and he basically tells his family, like, hey, these people aren't going to understand, I have to leave. And things just get out of hand. You find out his daughter has mutant abilities, they freak, and then they shoot somebody, lets go of an arrow, and it goes through not only his daughter, but his wife, and kills both his wife and daughter at the same time. And it is just gut-wrenching, because he wants to do the right thing, and then he just finds a necklace and just like kills them all with the metal. And it is just insane because he wants to be this good person, but he can never escape. He even like yells out, he's like, is this what you want from me? Is this what you want? He can't change. Magneto always has to be the way he is. And it's not because, like, I'm a mustache twirling villain, like, ha 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 ha, I need to be evil. No, he's tried other methods, they just don't work, and humans don't understand. So for the better half of the Mutant Brotherhood, he has to be the person he is as Magneto. And I like that about it. It shows their motivations. Now let's get to Apocalypse. I like Oscar Isaac's performance. However, the way the writing and direction is at the beginning of it, he is a little cheesy. It's almost like a 90s superhero villain. But he does get very menacing later on. Especially when he rescues Storm. I like that introduction, how he just used sand to kill people like Magneto does. But he amplifies the Four Horsemen's powers. So he recruits Storm, Angel, turns him into Archangel. Now, speaking of Archangel, holy shit, the Four Horsemen by Metallica was such an awesome sequence, and the music was just great to hear in Dolby Atmos in a theater. I just love that sequence. It put a smile on my face. And it's just like, rise, my angel, rise. Kind of reminded me of Fan of the Opera a bit. And then he recruits Psylocke and then Magneto. And I like the scene, he goes back to where his family was killed. His parents, that is, when they recruited him at Auschwitz with Sebastian Shaw. And he just like uses his powers to the full ability, uses the metal in the earth and just destroys everything. And you really get to see how powerful these mutants really are when they use their full potential powers. So later on, everything kind of connects with Mystique going to Charles Xavier. Now she's like in hiding as far as like... Now she just appears normal as a human. She doesn't want to be regarded as a hero. She's not used to it. And the mutants, even though there's peace, there's still those feelings of prejudice against mutants in the world. So nothing's really changed. It's just kind of buried for a moment. What I like about this movie the most, it shows the X-Men fighting against a super-powered being. It's not humans versus mutant rights. It's somebody that wants to destroy everything that's a force to be reckoned with. And probably the toughest opponent that the X-Men have ever had to face. However, I wish that they had a little bit more of Apocalypse and Mystique like in the comics, but it was still really good. Anyways, after the explosion of the mansion, Charles is taken, and I really like the scene of Professor Xavier talking to both Magneto and Apocalypse and the rest of the Horsemen and what's going on. But there's a scene where they go get captured by Colonel Stryker, and they go to Alkali Lake. And it's really nice because Bryan Singer, I said this in my other review, Bryan Singer in a way makes a better X-Men Origins Wolverine movie and has some of the Phoenix Saga done much better like the comics and earlier films than Last Stand or Origins Wolverine, and Apocalypse as well. So he gets, Scott Summers get his powers, so it's Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, and Scott Summers that have to go through there. And then the biggest surprise, now it was kind of spoiled before I saw it, but the biggest surprise was Weapon X. Hugh Jackman Wolverine gets the claws, but it was awesome because you see the Weapon X prototype head he had in the comics, and his hair is longer, it's more like the 80s comics. I thought that was so awesome, and then just seeing him go through and wipe out all the men. And I also like the scene him and Jean Grey have. You kind of hint at what the future holds for the both of them, and then he leaves. And I like, even though it was funny how he ran off, I liked it because even though it was a little bit different, it was still the same way he opened the door in the flashbacks of X2, X-Men United. The funniest scene, though, was Cyclops saying, like, yeah, I hope we don't see that guy in the future. And it's funny because you know they are. Most definitely. An earlier scene I forgot to mention is they go see Return of the Jedi, and they're talking about which is the best Star Wars. And they're like, well, we can agree that the third one's always the worst. A lot of trilogies, that's good. But I personally like Return of the Jedi, but I thought it was a funny joke because in a way it kind of took a jab at X3, The Last Stand, so that was kind of funny. Okay, back to Weapon X. They let Weapon X loose, and they get the mutants. And meanwhile, James McAvoy is sending a message to the rest of the human race from Apocalypse saying that the weak will be overtaken by the powerful, and that they will basically be wiped out. But it's cool because he changes the message and says, may the powerful stay and protect the weak. And I just love that. It shows what he stands for and like what he's teaching the mutants at X-Men Academy. He's just like, you teach them to coexist, but not only that, be a force for good. And that's what I love about him. But it's also cool because he sends Jean Grey a message telling him the location while he's doing that. So it shows you how powerful Xavier is. Cerebro was pretty cool. I like the scenes towards the end when they're going to face Apocalypse. Quicksilver is just like, we're all gonna be like great people or whatever, and he's just like, but I still live in my mom's basement, and nothing much has changed. I thought that was so funny. Kind of like my life now, but I liked Hank McCoy coming back. Nicholas Hoult did a good job. The fight scenes were great. Just overall fantastic. I liked it was a little bit of destruction, but I really didn't mind because it was like end of the world scenario stuff, and I liked the fights. But the biggest fight I really, really, really enjoyed was Professor Xavier fighting Apocalypse within his mind during the transference, and that was cool. And the best part, I don't think this happened in the comics, but I like how they explained why he turns bald. That was kind of cool. I was not expecting that. I thought it would have been earlier with Cerebro when he couldn't get it off of him, but that was a really cool way, and it shows Apocalypse getting big within his mind, kind of like he does in the comics. But it shows you how powerful Xavier is within his mind, and it was a very different type of fight we've seen from other X-Men movies, which is just physical and real. This one's like in each other's minds, some Inception stuff. I like Magneto turning good again. Seeing that his family there and needs his help. He has other family, a Brotherhood of Mutants. Jean Grey turning into Phoenix was a very cool moment, and it shows how powerful she is. In addition, Quicksilver just beating up Apocalypse like over and over. That was a great sequence. But if there's one thing I like about this movie, even though there's some characters that are underutilized or just appear kind of bored, they all use their fullest powers, and it's good because all the superhero films have been very ambitious lately, and they've kind of done their own things without following the usual formula. But I just love this movie because even though it's a bit disjointed at the beginning, it comes together. Each scene's building upon another, getting better and better, and at the end they're just like, screw it, we're just going to put everything in the kitchen sink and just go to town. And I just love that, how it's showing all the mutants just like fighting at their fullest potential, and that's just really cool. Bryan Singer, in my opinion, knocked it out of the park again. Now, it's not the best X-Men movie, no. My personal opinion, I like X-Men First Class and X2, X-Men United, and then Days of Future Past. This one's kind of more in line, or tied with X-Men. I would say the first X-Men is just a little bit better than X-Men Apocalypse, but it's still a solid entry on its own, and it's much better than X-Men Origins Wolverine or X3 The Last Stand, I feel. Also, I liked Rose Byrne back as Moira McTaggart. It was cool seeing that she didn't remember everything from First Class since Xavier wiped her mind, but I liked how he still had emotions there. And then when he gave her back her memories, it was just a touching moment, and he's just like, I should never have robbed you of your memories. I should have let you keep those. Just great. I like the humor between Havoc and Professor Xavier about Moira, where it's just like, I check her out. I was like, I'm checking to see where she is, and it's a funny joke, and then where he's just like, sees her office, and he's just like, you have a kid? What? That's so funny. And she's like, well, the dad's not around. He's like, oh, that's good. It's funny. And then it was crazy with Apocalypse using the nukes. That was just insane. But not only that, as far as tension, even though they went up into space, what was crazy about it is that it brought feelings of humans thinking mutants are dangerous, which they kind of are, but not all mutants. So it's going to have some impact there. The after credits scene, I like the hint towards Mr. Sinister, and possibly with Weapon X DNA, we may get Weapon X 23. So that might be a good way to get a female Wolverine in there if Hugh Jackman retires soon. So that would be good. I'm really looking forward to it. Mr. Sinister is a great villain, and I can't wait to see what they do in the 90s. Now, even though it's going to go on in the 90s, this one felt like it was a conclusion, not only to the X-Men series as a whole, but X-Men First Class trilogy. It's supposed to be the end of that trilogy, but you could really tell a lot of closure with a lot of flashbacks between the two movies. And then the end. Oh my god, I love how they had renditions of their comic outfits. So Mystique was kind of in a white and black, even though she just wears a white dress. But you had Nightcrawler with the white gloves, and then black and red. Jean Grey in her like comic book thing. And Cyclops with the blue and yellow. That was just so awesome seeing them in their comic book rendition costumes. And then I absolutely love this scene at the end, where it's just like, what happens when they go after your children? And he's like, I pity the poor souls who try to come after my children in the middle of the night. And it was cool because it was the same dialogue that Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart had in the original X-Men, as well as in X-Men 2, X-Men United. So that was really interesting seeing. And I like that scene. How it shows Magneto kind of coming back to good, but then it's just like he's still going to be the same person. And you can sense what's going to happen in the future. But I like how James McAvoy, he's always been his own Professor Xavier, a lot more younger and interesting, but like he's become the Patrick Stewart Xavier, finally. The real Professor Xavier we all know and love from the original X-Men movies. So I really like what they did there and their character development and progress. Yeah, those are just my quick thoughts. I'm trying to think. I need to see the film a second time. I'm just trying to process it, but as far as spoiler-filled stuff, which it does have spoiler-filled stuff, that's all I can really remember. I just want to give my quick thoughts and review. I thought it was a solid entry. I give it an 8 out of 10 and a solid A. That's my grade for X-Men Apocalypse.